All right, what is going on, guys? Happy Friday or Saturday, depending on when you're watching this video. Let's talk about some NFL. Looking forward to these two games on Saturday. We got the Texans and the Chiefs, Commanders and the Lions. So should be two pretty good games. We've got the Texans and the Chiefs first up at 4:30 Eastern. Chiefs minus 8.5. Man, this is going to be a cold game. We're going to see 22 degrees. Roughly around that during kickoff. So it is going to be cold, about a 13-mile-an-hour wind. So with the wind chill, it's not going to be good. Now, if you're a Chiefs fan, this is great news for you. And the head ref is very favorable to the Chiefs. They have never lost a game with him reffing. 6-0. So over-under of minus 8.5, freezing cold temps. Wow, with an over-under of 41.5, I think that is pretty tight. Minus 8.5 is a real tight line. I think you might take that down and maybe mess with the under a little bit. I don't love this matchup for the Texans. I don't love the cold weather game for them. We saw C.J. Stroud really step it up. I mean, I was impressed with him in their game. I thought that he really kind of proved something there. I thought he'd come out and kind of lay an egg, but he looked really good. Now, you're going against a very good Chiefs defense. So what are they going to be able to do? That is my fear, right, in this contest. So I don't have a ton of faith that they are going to be able to move the ball extremely well, right? If we look at the Chiefs defense, they've been pretty stout all year. Now, the Texans defense has been great against the run. But let's kind of dig into, let's dig into the Chiefs defense real quick. So depending on, which position we're looking at, right, against wide receivers, they've been great, allowing the 8th fewest receiving yards to wide receivers. In terms of passing yards to QBs, they've been giving up a decent amount, right? They're 20th in passing yards, allowing about 235. Now, you've got to figure this Chiefs team has had ample rest time. These starters obviously didn't play against Denver, had the first round bye, so they have had a decent amount of time between games. Where they are prone is to the tight end position, right? So maybe a guy like Dalton Schultz or Stover, go Bucks, could have a decent day. They are dead last in receiving yards allowed to the tight end position. So it does bode well for those two guys. Running back position, they are number 1 in rushing yards allowed, 56 yards a game. So not great for Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's really kind of been declining. It's not just the past 2 games, 3 games, 4 games. It's about 5 games where we just really haven't seen a lot of production out of him. So doesn't give me a ton of confidence that they're going to be able to move the ball on the ground. If we turn to the Chiefs side of the ball, Houston defense, they give up a lot of receiving yards to the wideout. So 25th in receiving yards allowed to the wide receiver position. Now, what they do a good job of is limiting passing yards. They're top 10. They're sitting 9th right now in terms of fewest passing yards allowed. One of the knocks against them, though, is they do give up explosive plays. I mean, they are dead last in explosive plays. So we do have a play for that, sort of. Tight end position, they've done really well. Houston D has limited tight end yards. They are number 3 in terms of fewest yards allowed to the tight end position. And like I said, they're very good against the run D. So they're 8th in the run D. So you've got the 1st and the 8th team in run defense. So we won't be taking any Pacheco props or anything like that. I did look at his rushing attempts. I mean, 10.5 is low, but and I have just been thoroughly unimpressed with Pacheco. Now, he could be getting a lot healthier. Who knows? He might have a hell of a game. I just don't want to put my money behind it, especially when he's splitting carries with Hunt. In my opinion, Hunt has looked immensely better than Pacheco has. So really don't want to touch that one. In terms of this game, I can't trust the Chiefs at minus 8.5. That feels too much. I drop it down to 6.5. Probably play with the under. Total for the Chiefs is a little high in my opinion. I wouldn't mind dropping that, maybe doing a play on under 28.5 points, something along those lines. Butker field goals almost made the card. Actually like Jaime Fairborn to go over 1.5 field goals. So that is one play that is on the card, but ultimately, like I said, I think the Chiefs win this game. It just depends on, is it going to turn into a blowout? man, it certainly has that feel. It has that feel. If they're 8.5, they're 8.5 for a reason. So if I had to take it, I would take the Chiefs minus 8.5. Next game, let's talk about the Lions versus the Washington Commanders. Didn't think the Commanders were going to win, but man, they pulled it out. That was a heck of a game. So let's talk a little bit about Washington's defense. Overall, kind of a mixed bag here. If we look at the wide receiver position, in terms of yards, they're very middle of the road, pretty much in everything to the wide receiver. They're somewhere between like 12th and 16th. To the QB position, really good in limiting passing yards. 5th fewest passing yards at about 205.38. Jared Goff passing yards. I want to pull the trigger on that under 274.5, but I just don't know if I can. I wish I would have gotten his under 35 pass attempts. That line is now 32.5, 31.5, depending on where you're at. Don't really want to pull the trigger on that. I think that's pretty tight. In terms of the tight end position, very middle of the road. The one thing that they do a pretty good job of is limiting receptions to tight ends. So they are 6th in terms of fewest receptions allowed. Then we come to the run game. A little bit different story. They're 27th in rushing yards allowed. Now, Lions do have David Montgomery back, and they've got Gibbs. So the two-headed monster is back. What do they call themselves? It's Sonic the Hedgehog. Can't think of it, but either way, Montgomery's back, which is awesome. And then in terms of rushing touchdowns, Washington, not good. 23rd in rushing touchdowns allowed. So if you're looking for some anytime props, I'll give that out in the Discord. Link is down below. Join it. But I didn't include any anytime touchdowns on this card. Let's talk a little bit about this Detroit defense. This has been an interesting defense, man. I think everyone's gotten hurt, and they're still finding ways to win. What they do is give up a lot of yards to wide receivers. They are dead last, 32nd, 188 receiving yards allowed. That's a lot. And then in terms of the QB position, giving up a lot of passing yards, 25th at 244 yards a game. And they give up a lot of rushing yards against a guy that likes to use his legs. So they are 25th in terms of rushing yards allowed to QBs. I love Jaden Daniels over 55.5, I believe is the line. Tight end position, they do a very good job of limiting receptions. They are number 1 in limiting receptions to the tight end position. So I do love Zach Ertz under his receiving yards today. Or I should say tomorrow, depending on when you're watching. And then to running backs, Detroit, really good job. They're 4th in terms of rushing yards allowed. Brian Robinson has just not looked good. So don't want to touch anything with Brian Robinson. But I do think that Jaden Daniels should be able to have a really nice day today or tomorrow. In terms of the over-under, 55.5, strong lean towards the under. I think this ends up becoming a running game for Detroit. I think they do slow it down a little bit. They're probably going to have a few explosive plays. That's just what this offense does. And I don't think Washington is able to move the ball down the field in big chunks. I think everything's going to be kind of short, dumpy, or Jaden Daniels is going to be using his legs. So I do see an advantage taking the under 55.5 in this position. So let's get into the betting card. Before we do that, guys, like I said, make sure you guys join the Discord. It's awesome. Love the environment. Got a little revamp in there in terms of the look. It looks fantastic. Link is down below. All right, first play is going to be DeAndre Hopkins over 2.5 receptions. Really cooked at minus 155. I don't care. I'll take it. Pair it with something else if you want to. He's over this in 8 of his last 10. Houston is 25th in terms of wide receiver yards. So I love this spot for him. They're 25th in reception. So great spot here. Xavier Worthy, he has been quite a weapon for Patrick Mahomes lately. I like his over 59.5 rushing plus receiving yards, minus 110 on BetMGM. He's over this in 3 straight games. Houston, we already talked about this. They give up explosive plays. So Xavier Worthy is that guy that can just eat this in one play down the field. So love this spot. A play we've gone to a ton this year. This has been bread and butter moneymaker. Samaje Perine over 8.5 receiving yards, minus 110 on BetMGM. He's over this in 9 of his last 10 games. He has just been absolutely crushing it on that front. One other thing on Xavier Worthy I want to talk about is targets. Last 3 games, he's had 11, 11, and 9 targets. So he has been getting a ton of targets. Reception lines at 4.5 too for Xavier if you want to look at that. We already talked about Kaime Fairborn. I like his over 1.5 field goals. He's over this in 8 of his last 10 games. Zach Ertz, under 29.5 receiving yards in the Washington-Detroit game. He's over this line in 6 of his last 10, but we already talked about this. Detroit, number 1 in fewest yards allowed to the tight end position, so really good spot there. David Montgomery, over 13.5 receiving yards. He's over this in 7 straight games. Obviously, he has been out, so I think that's why we're seeing this line so low. In those 7 straight games, he's had at least 20 yards receiving, so I don't think he's coming back. He's probably not 100%, but this time of the year, I don't think anybody is. So I think he's kind of right in line with everybody else. Jaden Daniels, over 55.5 rush yards. He's over this in 4 of his last 10 games, but he's over this in 3 of his last 5. We already talked about how Detroit, very prone to giving up rushing yards to the quarterback position. If we look at rushing quarterbacks, they have had a field day against the Lions. So it's one of those where they've been able to get a really good amount of rushing yards. If we look, let's see. Guys like Caleb Williams got 34. Josh Allen got 68. Caleb Williams got 39 again. Anthony Richardson got 61. Mason Rudolph got 29. Sam Darnold got 39. Geno Smith got 38. Kyler Murray, 45. Baker, 34. So they have been prone to give up a lot of rushing yards to the quarterback position. It's a playoff game. I think he's going to be more prone to just tuck it and go. And his rush attempt line is at 9.5. All right, so 10.5 on some books as well. Last play on the card here is going to be Austin Eckler under 3.5 receptions. This is just too much. It should be 2.5. He's only over this in 2 of his last 10 games, and Detroit is 4th in terms of fewest receptions allowed to the running back position. So those are my plays, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord. Link is down below, and I will catch you guys in tomorrow's video.